But anyways, it is great to be with you and to be able to share. I like to just, as you said, be informal and to interact. Sandy, you usually have question and answers or anything like that?
Yes, I do. You can, our goal, and I didn't say our goal, is Christian and Jewish support for Israel. And I met Pastor Blake Lorenz at Rollins when he had a rally for Israel after the Jewish teenagers were murdered. And I was very, very impressed because we didn't have one from the synagogues. So it was great that you had one.
Yeah.
So you can just...
Okay, what I'll do is I'll probably speak a little bit and then we'll have questions and talk some things. But we do, Beverly and I have a great love for Israel. That's why we're here. We love the Jewish people and the nation of Israel. I guess that was birthed in me as a kid because I grew up in Skokie, which is half my friends were all Jewish growing up, and we loved it because we got all the holidays off. We got the Christian holidays and the Jewish holidays off. That's my thinking back then when I was a kid. So, but that love for Israel and Jerusalem has grown. In fact, we're getting ready to go on another trip in 8 days to be in Jerusalem and Israel, and we're excited about that as we always go and have a wonderful time with the people there. Are just awesome. So I'm going to share some things out of my heart and how I see things developing in the world. The title or topic would be the unthinkable. And let me start out with this. Some of you know this, some of you don't know this. We were the ones several years ago, 6 years ago, that took in the Muslim girl who had become a Christian, and she ran away from home, and she was going to be killed for her faith. The honor killing that we hear so much about now, but back then, people didn't know so much about that. It wasn't as publicized. And I had an experience during all that to me applies to what I'm going to talk about, the unthinkable today. I was being interviewed by a reporter from St. Petersburg, and he was asking about Rivka, and we were talking, and he seemed so detached, so disconnected, and maybe from his journalistic, objectivity, although there's very few objective journalists today, in my opinion. So he goes, well, there's 1.5 billion Muslims. And I said, yes. He goes, well, what's the difference if one was killed? And he was serious.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. So I respond, I said, she's a human being. Every life is valuable. And it was like no connection with this guy. And I'm thinking, to him it's just a story. Just, okay, and because back then, and from his perspective, well, no father's gonna kill their child. Because in our culture, we can't even think that way. But in the Muslim culture, many of them do think that way. And so what I got from him was, well, if she was killed, okay, we made a mistake, we go on to the next story. Again, because her life's not, worth like we would think it's worth. And, so I'm trying to talk to this guy how valuable one human life is. And the whole idea, again, is, well, if we make a mistake, no big deal. But I thought, as I was preparing for this, isn't that the way a lot of people think about Israel? How they've thought about the Jewish people through the years. They've dehumanized them, no value, the worth and preparing for this, all this last week, I watched like Schindler's List. And it's so horrifying, I can only watch part of it at a time because it's so horrifying. And Diary of Anne Frank, and one I found that maybe, I haven't found anybody that's seen it, it's called Judith. Has anybody seen that? Judith. It was made like in the 1950s. Sophia Loren is the star, she's Judith. And it's actually filmed on the kibbutz out right at the Sea of Galilee. So you're looking at 1950, like 2 or 3 Israel. And you can get it on Amazon. I know that's how I watched it, on Amazon Prime. And So you can go on there and you can get it for free. So, but it's a story of, and I don't want to give it all away because you're going to watch it, but
No, that's okay.
But basically, it's right at the time when the Jews are going to be given this nation. So it's like 1947, 1948. They're surrounded by the Arab Muslim nations, and they're trying to figure out where the tanks are going to come in and attack them and overwhelm them as soon as they're declared a nation. Well, Judith was married to the Nazi German commander who has fled Germany. Now he's the one training the Muslims to destroy the future state of Israel. But nobody knows what he looks like. And they find out that his wife was a Jew put in a concentration camp. Come on. So they smuggle her in, and of course she hates him because she was not only put in a concentration camp, but her son or daughter, I think it was her son, was also murdered. And her husband, who was supposed to be her husband, has allowed this to happen. And so it's the story unfolds. I won't tell you anymore, but it's so I'm watching all these, and I'm being pulled in, and it's not out there. It's hitting me because it's personal, and the value of human being. And so I'm tying this in with, okay, Rivka, how the world and this news guy it's impersonal. And so I'm, Israel, no. What do you mean? Iran? Come on, Iran, they're not really going to try to destroy Israel. They're not going to try and annihilate Israel. Let's make a deal with Israel. And, this is the mindset. And I'm like, you know what they would say? Well, if the unthinkable happened, and the Muslim Arab countries unleashed their force, and America didn't step in, or God didn't step in, and Israel was overrun, what the heck would happen? It's unthinkable. We think of the Holocaust, and they would murder. How many Jews live in Israel now? 8, 9 million? Think about it. It's unthinkable what would happen. But we are on the verge of that right now. Come on. And the world would say, but if it happened, the world would say, oh, we were mistaken. But it's too late. It's too late. So my point is, why are we getting together? To stop the unthinkable. Because the unthinkable has happened before. In fact, I preached on the book of Esther today in our church service. It's happened all through the Jewish history, right? God used Esther to save the Jewish people from, Iran, named Persia back then. It's the same thing over and over and over again. And of course, and I think, again, I'm not going to get into theology, but obviously we believe in the Messiah. We're obviously different on who he is, maybe. But why the persecution of the Jews? Because God's used the Jewish people to save the whole world. To save the Jew and the Gentile. So he's going to try and destroy and stop the Jewish people. It's happened over and over. Now we're on the brink of it again. But it's like, this really can't happen. Well, they've tried to do it how many times since 1948? And only because you read the history of it, the miraculous intervention of God. You've read, whether you're Jewish or Christian, the stories are unbelievable, aren't they? The tank stories and other, the winds come up and all that's happened to save Israel. Well, God will do it again, but Iran and all these other nations are still going to try, just like Persia did in Esther's day. And God wants us, yes.
I always want to ask, what can each person do to stop Jew hatred?
Well, that's what we're getting to, and I'm glad we'll talk more about that. Like you're doing, you're trying to talk to these pastors. And again, I don't have the answer why the pastors don't speak out. We do here. I'm not lifting us up, but I spoke today and I speak all the time. Our love for the Jewish people, our love for Israel. We've got, to defend and stand with Israel. We talk about this all the time. Because from our perspective, Israel is at the heart of all what God's going to do and has been doing. And so, we have no other choice but to encourage people to promote the love of Jews instead of the hate of Jews.
Amen.
Which is,
has a responsibility, I feel.
The responsibility, the pastors, of course, have responsibility. Every Christian has a responsibility to speak out. And that's what's really touched our heart as we've gotten to know the Jewish community. We've still got a long to learn, but one of the things we have been overwhelmed with is how much we've been loved and embraced when we've gone to the synagogues and gone to Rabbi Rubinger and others. And the one thing we keep getting over and over again is we feel so isolated. Thank you for joining with us in our community. And see, Christians don't have that sense of isolation, so if you're not, we don't understand that. But it's like, wow, you guys really are with us. Yes, we're with the Jewish people. We're there. And this sense of isolation, we've got to break that down. Right? That's what you're talking about.
Yes, that's what I talked to you about before.
So,
and not for proselytization.
No, not for proselytization at all, because it's the same God.
As they are.
Yeah. So, how do we work to help to prevent the unthinkable? Obviously, through education, through building bridges of love, by doing what we're doing today, coming together even as a small group, because you can get personable this way, right? Now, I'm usually, well, not usually, I try to be totally honest. And I'm not trying to hide my thing. We have to build bridges. But it's not just bridges with Jews and Christians. We have to build bridges even with the Muslims. Now, I know, we were talking about, is it possible? Well, it is with some Muslims, some it's not. I mean, look what's happening in the Middle East. We know they're killing the Jews, they're killing the Christians even more, but they're also killing the Muslims more than they're killing the Christians and the Jews. So somehow we have to break this cycle. You have to build a relationship of trust. So I'm being honest, because of what we went through with Rivka and bringing her in and the persecution we experienced from the Muslim community, where we were labeled as kidnappers and brainwashers, and our whole reputation of working in this community for 30 years was basically trashed and lied about. Now, unless you go through that, you don't realize how hurtful that is. So I'm like, but God is saying, somebody's got to step and make the difference. We have to build bridges of trust and relationships, not just with the Jews and the Christians, but also with the Muslims, and really with all people in that sense. But I tell you, I have a hard time trusting Muslims. Because in my mind, they're wanting to take over, and they're killing Jews, Christians, and Muslims. It's insane. Of course, from my perspective, it's demonic, it's of the devil, and that's what's driving all that. But we have to, again, stop the unthinkable. Which, in Esther's case, what I talked about this morning was, she had to get out of her detachment. She's the queen. She's the original Cinderella story. Come on. She's an orphan who becomes the queen of Persia, which is the greatest empire in the world at that time. She's living the Cinderella story. She hears they're going to kill all the Jews, and if you read the book of Esther, I don't know the last time you read the book of Esther, it says the letter went out to destroy and kill and annihilate all the Jews. So we're not living in, Hitler tried to do the same thing, Iran's going to try and do it. And she was like, I'm compassionate, I care, but I'm really not going to do anything about it, because I could get killed by the king. Do you remember the story? And then finally she's convinced, if I perish, I perish. So there's a cost involved. We've got to be willing to lay down our lives for this. Just like, and I'm not bust, but we literally laid down our lives to save this Muslim girl who had become a Christian. And we lost a lot. Some of you walked through it with us. We lost our church. We lost all our money. We lost our reputation. And we were the good guys. What we've got to, I think this will help, because I'm not Jewish, so I don't have a Jewish mindset, but our daughter is dating an Orthodox Jew. And talking with him and listening to him, it's helped me understand, because like his grandmother was miraculously saved out of a concentration camp. So I read her book. She wrote a book on it. And see, in her mindset, well, Hitler and all them were Christians. So for our thinking, it's like, well, they weren't Christians. How can you think they were Christians? But the Jewish mindset, at least from there, was these were all Christians doing this to the Jews. And they were under the title of Christian. Now, Hitler wasn't, but he was in a cult. He was well, he was the devil, basically. But the Christians need to understand the Jewish mindset, which this is what this building bridges is about. And I can, because we talked to him, and he's an Orthodox Jew, and he talks, and he's, I don't know if he's more modern, because I said, well, how are you able to date my daughter? I don't know how all that works. But anyways, it's been very enlightening for us to hear this perspective that helps teach us how we can better build bridges with the Jewish community, because it helps me understand what they're thinking. Because again, our thinking would be, we would never think Hitler or the Nazis were Christian. But from their perspective, when he talks, well, look what you all did to us. And I'm like, well, we didn't do that. Christians didn't do that. Well, yes, you did. No, those weren't Christians. But from the Jewish perspective, I see, yes, those were Christians. And then you study history. I mean, it wasn't just the Nazis. They did it in England and France and Italy and all through Europe. I mean, the persecution is terrible. So we have a lot to ask forgiveness for and build the bridges.
This is a loaded question.
Yes.
Is Christianity anti-Semitic?
Absolutely not. True Christianity is not. That's the difference. Islam, they're trying to change Islam to become more like acceptable. But original Islam is anti-Semitic. Original Christianity is definitely not anti-Semitic.
They were all Jews, but...
They were all Jews, the first ones.
From a Jewish perspective, as you're saying...
You would say, yes, we were... And that's why, and again, I'm not... Read our part of the Bible, the New Testament, and you will come away, well, there's no way. It's all about loving each other, and it's all about, it has nothing to do with hating Jews or anything. There's nothing in there about that. The reason this developed, at least in my perspective, is because the Gentiles who took over the Jesus faith, let's say, well, the Jews killed Jesus, so then we're going to hate the Jews. That's what developed. Does that make sense? That's where this hatred began to develop, and it took root in Christianity, so no question about that. But true Christianity is about love and not hating anybody or persecuting the Jews at all. But they took it and they said, well, the Jews killed Jesus, so therefore the Jews are to be hated. Which is totally wrong, but that's what happened.
Jews didn't kill him.
Well, they did. Everybody. Well, from our perspective, everybody was a part of killing Jesus, because from our perspective, he died for the sins of the whole world. But we're not here to get into Jesus theology. So.
But the Jews do feel like guilty, or feel like
Oh, yes.
They think, why would you like me or care about? They think we hate them.
Yeah.
We absolutely don't. These two, their roots are from Israel, and they could teach us a lot. I'm always saying we should at some point do something with that.
But that's just part of the dialogue and overcoming all this ingrown prejudice and all this, and that's why I love getting to know Alan, because
Well, that's why we have our group, the Zionistas.
Well, that's what this is for, is to help us. And
unusual group.
And then the other thing, you'll have to help us and forgive us, because I'm sure I say things that maybe don't even come across right. And I'm not thinking anything. It's ignorance on my part, and that's why I've got to learn. I've got to grow and learn, and that's part of what we're here for, is to build bridges.
Well, I had a pastor tell me last week, and I think I told you that the Gospels say that Christians should be against Jews.
Yeah, see, that's totally wrong.
That's what he told me.
And that guy is totally wrong, and he would be one that I would like to talk to. Are you really a follower of Jesus, or do you really know the Bible? No. Because that's the Gospels of Jesus are all about love, and loving one another. And actually Jesus even said, I'm here to go to the Jewish people. I'm not even here to go to the Gentiles. That's how his love was for the Jewish people. So I don't know where this guy would get this from, but I can understand it in the sense of because all this distortion through.
Well, that's what Jewish people basically have a hard time understanding.
And I can see that. And that's why we've got to go, the Christians needs to go the extra mile with love and forgiveness and humility and show that we really are people who love you.
Yeah. Well, I think if most Christians know how many Jews they've slaughtered over 2,000 years, they would probably be shocked.
Yes, in the name of Jesus.
In the name of Jesus.
Right, exactly. But I do refute one thing, because my brother's, he's always against Christians, my brother. And he goes, yes, and there's been more people killed in the name of religion, meaning Jesus and Muslims. And I said, no, you're totally wrong. First of all, because, again, you got to understand my perspective. World War II was not about Christians with Hitler and the Nazis, and they killed, 80 million people. Mao Zedong, they killed 100 million people. They're atheists. More people have been killed in the name of atheism than in the name of God. Enough have been slaughtered in the name of God as well. So, and forgive me for this, but when I read the Old Testament, the Jews weren't totally innocent either in how they killed people. Is that true?
That's right, of course.
Yeah, so we're all in it together. God have mercy on us, which he does. Thank you for your mercy and grace. So the point is, if we are to stop the unthinkable, we've got to be willing to lay down our lives. Amen. Which, putting away mistrust, putting away hatred, putting away our prejudiced thoughts, and seeing that every one of us have human value and worth at the same level, that we're all created in the image of God.
Amen.
And so, my thing is, all right, God lead me in how I can build bridges. And again, practical steps. You're doing it right here. You're doing it through the paper you send out. The charisma's helping with that. People are doing, I'm a big person of prayer. Prayer. God will do this too. We're not alone. God's in this. And we go to Israel. We build bridges. We go to the Jewish people in Israel and work with them. And what other things can be done?
People need to speak up.
People need to speak up.
To their neighbors.
To their neighbors. We need to do rallies like we did last summer, Rally for Israel. Nobody knows this except a few people. We had a heck of a tough time getting that thing launched because, we get this place, oh no, you can't have it here. Then we were at Rollins, oh no, you can't have it here. And I had to spend a lot of money and Rabbi Rubinger helped a lot to make sure that happened because people don't understand. The weather didn't cooperate at all. But hey, that's your fault, God. But we need to do those things, and at some point, Beverly and I want to bring pastors and rabbis together, and some of that's already being done. But we need to be able to speak up and confront in love, but confront where we find anti-Jewish or anti-sentiment. Well, and another practical thing is to build relationships between the Jewish and Christian. They're just not superficial relationships, but really build relationships. And God has a great sense of humor. When we were looking for a lawyer, when we had Rivka, and we didn't know what to do with this young girl because she was 16, so she's a minor. What do we do with? Well, we got to find a lawyer. And Barry God sent us to Barry, which we didn't know who he was. We didn't know he was Jewish. We didn't know any of these things. And he sent us to Barry.
And then he said me, and then I introduced you to Barry.
Yes. Yes. So God's in it.
Yes.
And we never need to give up hope. We always need to be filled with hope. But there's sacrifice, cost, and it's hard work. Love is hard work, isn't it?
That's right.
And obviously, the Christians don't have a whole lot to be proud of as far as how we in history have persecuted the Jews. Now, there's been a lot of Christians that have stepped in and done great things for the Jewish community and saved lives, but overall, you read the history of the Christians is pretty bad for how they've treated the Jews, and so we need to obviously go the extra mile and build those relationships. So, first of all, Israel will never allow it to happen, so they'll die to the last person before they will give up their nation. Right? True? Never again. I mean, that's the motto. Never again, which I'm right with them. Never again it should happen. So this, and again, this is my perspective. The Palestinian-Israeli two states will never work because the whole goal is to destroy Israel. And I don't know why Obama, but it's not him. It was Bush was the same way. They're deceived. I don't know what they're thinking because it's right in their constitutions. The Palestinians, Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran, we're going to destroy Israel. It's right in their constitution. And so how can you, I don't know. You can't just, but we have to build, and there's the complexity. We have to build bridges with those who we can build bridges with. Right.
It's not easy.
Well, but I want to touch on something that, again, and if this is offensive, let me know, because from my perspective, because you guys, when I talk to the rabbis and the Jewish community, it's the first thing, are you going to proselytize us?
That's right.
Which I understand. But from my perspective is, from the Christian perspective, we're not trying to get anybody to become non-Jewish.
Right.
That's no goal at all. And again, obviously, I have Jewish friends who have become followers of Jesus. Okay, not that I've led them to do that, but they don't become Christians. They are they're still Jewish. But I know you don't see it that way. And the Jewish people, so that's why I'm saying there's conflict there. And I guess in love, I'm trying to say, we're not trying to make anybody who's Jewish become not Jewish.
That's good.
At least from my perspective. I'm not saying others might not be doing it. But from my perspective,
Well, historically.
I would never try to do that. Does that make sense?
Could you expound on that a little bit more?
Yeah, how can I expand on it more? Because I'm still learning myself, but in other words,
When you said that we're not trying to make them non-Jewish.
say in other words, a Jewish person comes to me and says, I want to follow Jesus, okay? I'm not trying to make them become a Christian. If they want to follow Jesus, in my mindset, they're still Jewish. But I understand, I'm learning because I would talk to one of the rabbis, and because I was trying to get a term with them, and I was trying to, and what do you call someone who is Jewish but now is following Jesus?
Christian.
And he says, well, you can't, he goes, you're either a Christian or you're a Jew.
That's right.
In my mindset, no. But I'm not saying I'm right, I'm just saying in my mindset that a person can be Jewish and be a follower of Jesus. In my mindset. But in the Jewish mindset, I'm understanding, no, you're giving up who you are as a Jew, and that's a terrible thing. And I'm trying to learn all this and digest this. So you're just going to have to bear with my ignorance. I don't know what else to say. Does that make sense?
That was great.
I'm trying to learn. The first time I went to Israel, I didn't know anything, and of course, we're not going over there to try to get the Jewish people to become Christians. That's not why we go there. But I had Christian material, and this one guy took me aside. He says, this is not. It was for Christians over there. The material that I brought was for Christians. So it was like, but this is really bad to have this over here. I said, why? Well, then he began to explain to me what I just tried to share, that from a Jewish perspective, you're trying to get people to become not Jewish. And I'm not trying to do that at all. I'm not trying to do that.
Probably got the answer to all this.
Well, I don't have all the answers. I'm just trying to love and build a bridge and understand the Jewish mindset so I don't offend Jewish people. Does that make sense?
Sometimes you have to agree to disagree. There is a dichotomy there.
Yeah.
I mean, I have enough, I've lived in a Christian world. I'm
Yeah.
usually the only Jew wherever I go.
Yes.
So you're trying to spread the word of Jesus because you love Jesus.
Right, exactly.
Jews want to stay Jews.
Right.
There are some Jews, I said, who are not interested because they either don't like being a minority or whatever, or they
Right.
do find they love Jesus.
Right.
But the dichotomy is still there. Most Jews want to stay Jews.
Right.
So they want to be left just the way they are. And I say that like in a marriage.
Right.
You know, when you meet somebody and you get married or you have a relationship, you want to change that person.
Right.
It's not a good idea to meet somebody and try
Try
to
to
change
change,
them.
exactly. Good
So
point.
this
That's
is
a good.
the same thing.
Same thing. Now, all right,
it
let me
doesn't
ask you a
work.
question that I need help understanding. So my daughter's dating an Orthodox Jew.
It's surprising.
So if she converts to Judaism, does she become a Jew?
Yes.
She does become a Jew.
Absolutely.
Even though physically she's not of the Jewish line, but she becomes a Jew.
Yes.
Ruth and Naomi.
So that's why if a Jew becomes a follower of Jesus, they become a Christian and not a Jew anymore.
Absolutely.
Is that okay?
Yes.
That helps me.
That's-
That helps me
that's-
understand that. Okay.
Messianic Jew.
Well, I'm trying to understand the Jewish mindset. I'm not, I'm trying to understand where they're coming from, so I can
Jews is
not
essentially-
offend people, I guess.
Yeah.
So Jewish
Yeah,
has to do with being religion, not with your birth.
correct.
Okay.
Basically,
I was just going to say, I had similar, yeah, I had a similar thing as Dottie. Barry, when I met my husband, I said, oh my gosh, we come from a Gentile family, not even a Christian family, but they said they were Christian, Gentile family. And then my mother said, I'm so glad you're marrying Barry because we're Jewish. And I said, are you kidding me? They've been hiding it the whole time out of fear. Okay? So now I can celebrate being Jewish, being married to a Jewish person, being able to go to synagogue, and also as a believer.
And you were Levi,
Yes,
right?
and I'm from the Katz family, and he's from the Levi family. So God uses that. But I was just going to say is that the enemy has used it to separate us.
Yes.
And it's just a propaganda. We've got to break down and really understand the history. Because back when the Nazis took over, he was not religious. He was following actually masonry things.
Right.
It was very demonic things.
Right. Hitler's all demonic.
And what he did is he rounded up all the pastors and threw them in a big arenas and told them, if you don't follow me, I'm going to kill you. Well, guess what? They killed most of the pastors back then. So there was no religious. Now the things the Catholic, unfortunately, did follow that and succumb to it.
Yeah.
So, that's the hypocrisy going on.
Right.
But we've got to be able to separate the two and understand that, and to see with our eyes who's really with us and who really loves us. We've got to be able to pick that up.
Well, and that's what Mike was saying before. The fruit of how we live is we really need to love each other. And that's why if I do something or say something that offends you or I need to be educated, help me, okay? Because we've got to build bridges of love. That's the only way we're going to stop the unthinkable, except obviously God.
I believe this is the time. I really do.
Yes. Well, one of the great books I would encourage everybody to read is the one Tom and Carol you gave me to read. It was a very thick book written by a woman who was a very activist with the civil rights movement. She went over to Israel to defend the Palestinians, and then when she did all the research, she wrote a book this thick showing how it was the Arabs and Muslims who undermined the whole peace process.
Book, and that's right. She went ahead, she was going to do this in favor of the Palestinians. But the more research she did, she found that they did not have a case.
Yeah.
So, and I do want to say, one of the problems that I find is that people want to be politically correct. They don't want to say anything about Islam. Islam basically is a violent religion. Their leader was a violent person. And it is a violent religion. Our president never says anything, never says Islamic terrorism or anything like that. And I find that even when I talk to my Jewish friends or Jewish people, because they have been discriminated against, Jews, for so long, that they feel uncomfortable discriminating against anyone else. So I have Jews who still vote Democrat, Jews who still like Obama, Jews who don't want to say anything negative about Islam and Christians too, because it's uncomfortable putting someone else down. But we can't continue to be politically correct. We have to speak out. We have to call a spade a spade. And then I read something recently that there are many, many Muslims, thousands of them, that are being resettled here in the U.S., in Texas, Oklahoma, all over. So not to speak out to me is a sin. You have to speak out to the newspapers. You have to vote the right way. Be sure you vote for people who care about what you care about. So I just want to say political correctness should be thrown out the window. Speak up and don't worry about political correctness.
Yeah, the groups that are resettling the Somalis, it's the Lutheran and the Catholic services, they get paid $1,500 per person to bring them in and resettle them all around the country. I am amazed at this current Pope and the activity that's taken place in the last 10 days. He's recognized Palestine as a state. He's declared the leader of the Palestinians as an angel of peace. And today I read that he's starting to canonize Palestinian saints. So he's building bridges for us.
That's why it's so complicated. Original Islam is violent, and Muhammad murdered Christians, Jews, but now there are Muslims who have changed if you want to use a vowel, where they don't follow the original.
Those are the only Muslims that you can
And
follow.
you can, and that's what makes it complicated, because they want to live in peace and they want to love just like everybody else does, but they don't follow the original. That's why I talk to people, and I say this in our church, it's not radical Islam, it's original Islam. That's the problem, is original Islam, because if you have any study of history, and I got into this because my son is getting his doctorate in history, and I read all of these books that he was using on the Middle East, and I'm going, my gosh, Islam was nothing more than Genghis Khan, basically, the Mongols going out and conquering. And the Palestinians talk about, about colonialism and all that, but the Arabs were the worst of them all. They went out and conquered all the Middle East, all of Northern Africa. They conquered and spread Islam that way through killing and violence. In fact, again, obviously being a Christian, Jesus taught his disciples to go out and love. Muhammad, it's unthinkable that his disciples would do anything but that. Yet Muhammad's disciples raised armies and fought and killed each other in order to conquer.
They're following Muhammad.
Yes. So it is a little complicated, because there are a lot of Muslims who don't profess to original Islam.
It's an ideology. I just heard that.
Yeah, and it's a complicated thing. So thank you, Mike. And it expresses what I believe all of us why we're here today, to express that love. And hey, we don't have all the answers, but we can love each other and overcome our difficulties and the past history and everything that's there. We can really love each other and support Israel. Amen. Support Israel to me is key. Support Israel. So. Well, and the Jewish people, which because actually, Israel is more than the Jewish people, isn't it? Because there's Muslims, Christians, and Jews in Israel.
Is one thing that I wanted to add, and I tell everybody, no matter who they are, I tell them, the days of minding your own business are over. We need to care about one another, in your neighborhood and everything. At the Holocaust Center, they teach the kids, bystander? Don't be a bystander, be an upstander. You see something that's wrong, you be an upstander. That's their whole program. And Ezra International and Ebenezer and these other ministries, and Bill was on the board of Ezra, and they used his book, The Final Exodus, for years. And what they do is they find the poorest of the poor Jew in the Ukraine, in Russia, and everywhere. They go ahead and assure and get their documentation that they are Jewish. They support them, they pay off all their bills, and then they turn them over to the Jewish agency to take them to Israel. And we've been doing that to years, and no proselytizing, oh, verboten, no way.
Right.
And so no matter who you are, regardless of what they are, everybody, they're people. I don't care. I tell everybody religion is man-made, what we have made. You know, God is love. God is love, and we need to love one another.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Daddy. That was perfect. It's always good. I don't know about anybody else. I just want to say it's been an awesome afternoon because I felt everybody was very honest with their feelings. And I truly believe that this is the time. This is the time now for Christians and Jews to get together with love, with feeling, with honesty. So whatever you all can do, that's great. And I just want to add one more thing. My family was a family that was murdered in Poland in the early 1940s. A very, very large family. My grandparents had 7 to 10 kids. They were very poor. Most Polish Jews were poor. And the only survivors of my family were 4 people, 2 brothers, 2 sisters who were teenagers at the time, and they were taken by the Germans as slave laborers to Germany. Probably read about, I'm sure a lot of you have read about the Holocaust. But I don't think there's a day in my life that has gone by that I don't think about my family and what could have been. The musicians, the artists, the scientists, the technicians, the doctors, the lawyers, the everything that they could have been. And that's just one family. So thinking about that all the time is what makes me really glad to hear Christians feel love and not animosity. And I'm so happy for my group, the Zionistas, who have been tremendously supportive. And I'm now making it my mission to try to get around to speak to various pastors, different churches in the area, to get them to actually denounce, I don't even want to say anti-Semitism, because to me that's a whitewashed term, anti-Semitism. I'm using Jew hatred, to denounce from the pulpit Jew hatred. Each one of you can do that to your neighbors, to your friends in your church. It's not part of Christianity. You tell me so. You can do that. So,
Amen. That's right.
So thank you for having us here,
You're
Pastor
welcome.
Blake, and
You're welcome.
Pastor Blake, and thank you for all of you coming out here today. I appreciate each and every one of you, and I'm going to cry if I go on. So
We got
I
refreshments
appreciate
back
it.
there. If you
Oh
want to
yes,
talk and share.
we have lots of refreshments if you want to keep talking.